Hello. Good afternoon and welcome to each and every one of you here on this very incredible special day. I think Barry has an opening song for us and we'll begin with that.
Yeah, I chose some songs today that I felt reflected, of course, the spirit of our friend Chris. So I'd like to ask all of us to stand. And it's simply a song inspired by the prayer of St. Francis. The words I want you to sing along with me. It's Lord, make me an instrument of your love, of your light, of your peace, and of your joy. And it is, of course, the prayer of St. Francis. But those of you who knew Chris as well as I did, it was also his prayer to me. Lord, make me an instrument. Lord, make me an instrument of your love. That's all there is to it. Together. Lord, make me an instrument of your love. Lord, make me an instrument of your love. 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 Lord, make me an instrument of your light. Of your light. Lord, make me an instrument of your light. Lord, make me an instrument of your light. 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 Of your peace. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Of your peace. Of your peace. Of your peace. Of your joy. Lord, make me an instrument of your joy. Lord, make me an instrument of your joy. Lord, make me an instrument of your joy. 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 Make me instruments of your joy, of your light, of your peace, of your joy, of your joy. Make me an instrument the joy of your Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Barry. That was wonderful. So, welcome. We are here to celebrate life because every life that has been lived has great meaning and touches so many other people, even when we are completely unaware of it. That we are in this world and of this world, but we are of God. And in that, we are one. We are the one physical expression of God. And we are like those trees, those aspens that are separated trees, look like individual trees, but that root system is connected, and each one of those trees is part of the whole. And so all life, every sentient being is part of the whole. And there is no one, nowhere, no how, no time that has not been here and served a purpose. And we know the purpose that was Chris Farmer's life, Chris Blanton Farmer's life, was a purpose that just shone on all of us, that touched each and every one of us. And how delighted we are to be here with this opportunity to come together as a unit to celebrate together. This is from Khalil Gibran. Then Alamitra spoke, saying we would now ask of death. And he said, you would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of our hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate of eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king, whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling, that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet he is not more mindful of his trembling. For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to create breathing but to free the breath from the restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God's unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then you shall truly dance. There has never been a doubt in my life that death is freedom. Freedom from our fears, freedom from our worries, that I am sure we must somehow look back into that place that we were and laugh. Not that pain isn't real. Pain in this life is real. But we can find a place within us that knows it as temporary. We can find a place within us that finds a higher place where love, light, and joy reside. We can find a place in us because it exists not only in us, but as us. It is the truth of our being. And when someone has passed and left this life, this body behind, we have the opportunity to know the truth. It doesn't take away our sadness. It doesn't remove from us the grief that we feel, but it eases it. It eases it. And later on, whenever that person comes to mind, knowing where they are and what life is about for them now, we smile. We even laugh. We feel them right as close to us as our own breath. So I wish you all knowing this for and about Chris and for yourselves to know the truth of death and sadness to the person who is left us, who has left this plane, is not necessary. It's not required. That person is not sad at leaving. They are in more joy and peace than they have ever known. Thank you. So I'm now going to call on Reverend Lisa Neves, and she will speak to you about grief.
Yes, we know this is a celebration of Chris's life, but we would be remiss if we were to try to avoid any of the grief process that we may go through. And so I just want to take a little time to share with you that there will be stages of grief that we will go through. And the very first stage is that initial shock. I remember how shocked we were to hear the news. And then that moving into the denial piece of not believing it's really happening. So the first step is to deny what has happened. And then there's another step of grief, which is bargaining. What if I told him to slow down? What if I could have seen what may have been happening? We find ourselves doing this bargaining, and we have to begin to heal and move from that. Then along comes depression. And this is an area I really want you to look into for yourself, because during depression, sometimes we have a tendency to isolate ourselves. And when you're in that moment, try to gain the strength to reach out. To reach out, don't isolate yourself. There's other people feeling the same and wanting to support you. Also comes anger. Anger at him for leaving, anger at God for letting it happen. And it's okay to experience these feelings. God gave these feelings to us for a reason, to help us move this energy. And after a while, we began to settle into acceptance. We come to terms with the emotions that we're feeling. And things that might help us resolve our grief is to acknowledge and accept both the positive and negative feelings and allow plenty of time to experience the thoughts and feelings. Confide in others and express your feelings openly, or even write a journal. This will help shift that energy into acceptance. You may need to find a bereavement group to join. And if it gets too much, I suggest you reach out for counseling, because it's such a shock to our system when we lose somebody that's so close to us. And then I wanted to talk about, how do you talk to somebody that's grieving? It gets complicated at times, and it can be hard to know what to say. But you can ask, is there anything that you would like to share? You can directly acknowledge the bereaved person by saying, I can't imagine how hard it must be. Or, I'm sorry to hear the news about your loved one. Sorry for your loss is okay, but it's overused. And it's common for people to worry about bringing up death because they feel it might be uncomfortable. But on the contrary, it acknowledges their loved one. Invite them to share their stories with you. And you may want to avoid saying, I know how you feel. We don't know how each person's feeling. We know our own personal feeling of grief. And so don't make that mistake. Just say, I understand. Let the person tell you what they want to tell you. It doesn't feel comfortable for somebody to pry into wanting to know details. Just ask open-ended questions to bring about conversation. Another thing that you can do is offer an act of service. And that could be as simple as helping somebody wash their dishes or just sit beside them, help them clean their home, but make a suggestion of something simple and tangible. And sometimes it's easy just to sit and say nothing at all. Just be there. Be there with your loving energy. And as I was talking earlier, it's always good to share your personal stories and experiences, because he had a rich life and we enjoyed his richness. And so what I would like to do, because it'd be presumptuous of me to speak any further, is to bring it back to Reverend Kathy. So there's some sharing moments.
Most of you probably remember that I sent, when I sent out information, I said if you had anything that you would like to have said, just send it to me. Well, this is from his aunt, who knew him from the time he was born. It's his father's sister. She says, I used to call Chris Superman, Captain America, his Halloween costume, because to me, he was a superhero. He seemed invincible and he was incredibly gifted with everything he undertook. I introduced him to more serious road biking, triathlons, hiking, tennis. This is the wrong one. I just realized that. Let me see. Oh my gosh. I will continue and then I'll run upstairs and get the other one in a few minutes. Okay. A funny story. I bought him his first Alexa gift, which he set up immediately, but he kept calling her Alexa. And of course, she didn't respond. She didn't understand what he was saying. He got frustrated and called tech support, only to find out that he was mispronouncing her name. And I couldn't say a thing, but just quietly laugh. A couple of months ago, I asked him, how are you able to master all these skills? I'm so amazed at what you can do. His response was confidence. I know if I spend time, I can figure out how, no matter how long it takes. And that was his motto for everything. Once he decided that he wanted to do something, he stayed focused and devoted the time and he made it happen. Okay, there we go. We talked about who was a mentor growing up. He said his mentor was Captain Kirk from Star Trek. Because he was an adventurer, an explorer, a leader, his commitment to his men, his open-mindedness and underlying spirituality. And Chris was definitely an adventurer. Yes. He met and dedicated, motivated triathlon people with the same goal to fundraise for a common cause like leukemia and lymphoma. Later on, he started his own fund, raised for the mental health awareness too. When he passed, I realized just how many people's lives he touched. His triathlon friends organized a bike ride around Had Lake, where he passed away. And a flower ceremony was a celebration on life on Labor Day. And 25 to 35 people attended, including triathlon teammates, open water swim friends, and work friends. I think that's, yeah, let's see, we'll get to the last paragraph. Thank you. Yes, thank you. I think this is it. Yes, thank you. I'm sad that he didn't get to finish his life goals and dreams, writing a book, giving inspirational talks, doing Ironman races around the world, and building his forever house, which is almost complete. He was waiting for his endless pool and jacuzzi to be put in. I'm so heartbroken that he's gone, but I'm glad that he was doing something he loved so passionately. And he told me several times that if I pass away while doing something, I love triathlons, I'm okay with that. I've enjoyed my life. Now he is in a resting place filled with love and joy, and he can feel how much he was loved by so many people. He left a large imprint on this earth. Thank you. Okay, so next we have Mike. Michael Alexander is a childhood friend of Chris's, and he traveled up here from California to be with us today.
I've had way too much coffee today. So I'm going to share my experiences would be Chris's younger years, but I first met Chris when I was in 10th grade. I was attending a picnic with a neighborhood friend, and that was actually part of that friend's church youth group. Chris was another member of that group and made quite an interesting first impression. I was playing Frisbee down the hill from our picnic table, and I turned around and saw Chris coming down the hill. But it wasn't just Chris. He and my friend Tammy had the youth leader's 4-year-old in between them, and they were all three holding hands. And at first glance, I'm like, oh, that's just some family. No, that was Chris. And I'm like, is Chris a family man? Thought that was quite interesting. Sorry. My family was not a church-going family. And back then, I could probably count the times I've been to church on one hand. The youth group invited me to join them on a camping trip the following week. When Chris said he was going, my decision was made. We had a great time on that camping trip, and my first impression of Chris was only reaffirmed there. Here was a kid that wasn't afraid to truly express himself to his peers and say exactly what was on his mind, regardless of how it sounded. Now, I feel the need to repeat this because he was in 8th grade at the time. You're talking to other 8th graders, expressing your feelings. You remember middle school, how that was? That didn't always end well. Well, when I did that, I got called all kinds of mean names. Chris would receive that same kind of treatment, the same wisecracks, insults, and sometimes downright cruelty. The difference was Chris never censored himself or allowed the opinions of others to change the way he was, ever. I admired that. I wanted to be like that. And as our friendship continued to grow, so did my confidence in who I was. Chris and I shared many interests. We both played tennis. We both had personal computers in the early 80s, which was kind of unique. And Chris was a skier. Realizing how like-minded we were, I thought, wow, here's this cool guy, proficient in physical activity, has a goofy, stupid sense of humor, who accepts me and all of my faults, and there are many, and still has my back. His courage soon became my courage. And if I heard a negative comment about Chris, even in that youth group, I had his back. When Chris moved on to high school, his quirky, unique personality turned to success and popularity. Finally, the other people saw him the way that I saw him. We attended different schools, but I was still aware of his reputation. Chris was quick to join the swim team. Nobody's surprised on that. And there he became a legend. The cool blonde guy who comes to school wearing matching pajamas with nothing underneath except a Speedo. When I first saw this, I thought, that guy's ahead of his time. By the time Chris was finishing up high school, he was my best friend. He was making me a better skier, a better tennis player, and best of all, a better person. As we started college, the quirkiness continued. Funny true story. Many an evening, we had a little core group of friends, and we would wind up at the beach around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Chris, because he would be wearing that Speedo underneath, would often just drop his clothes and go swimming. After one of these evening swims, he looked disappointed and he sounded disappointed. As I started to inquire, somebody's car lights went across Chris's body and I saw what had happened. And I asked him, "Are your clothes stuck to you?" And Chris replied in a sad voice, "I didn't have a towel and I was cold." So Chris, being Chris, just got dressed while dripping wet and all of his clothes were stuck to him. Well, I got many memories like that, and I had to narrow it down to one. And it's just stories like this one that I miss the most. All those little unique signatures that Chris has left for all of us throughout his life, those misspellings in Facebook posts, or misuse of bad grammatical use in his emails, all gentle reminders that Chris will always be Chris, and he will always be my best friend, who I miss and love. And I miss him very much.
So my name is Russell Johnson, and it says here I was Chris's roommate, housemate would be a better word.
Yeah.
Just saying. The first thing I thought about what to say today, I rehearsed it in my mind driving. The first thing that keeps on coming up is, this does not seem real. How is this possible? And I wonder if it really is. With that said, I really could tolerate and even expect him to come through that door right now with that, I don't know about you, anyone else here, did you have anyone else experience that wink that he has? It's encouraging wink. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. It doesn't seem real, doesn't seem possible. I've been much of a loner most of my life, traveling and traveling and traveling. One day, 1 week, going through Portland in about 2007, 2008, I answered an ad or a posting for a meeting for A Course in Miracles. I went, there were maybe 3 people there. One of them was Chris, who was hosting it. When we stayed in touch ever since. I went to the meeting a few more times, kept on traveling. And about 4 years ago, I decided to move to Portland. And I asked Chris if I could rent a room for a couple of weeks while I find a place. And he had me move in. Now, Chris and I really could not be much different. Okay. And we're inspired by a lot of the same things. Chris, and you've heard a lot of it here today already, was this, he just insisted on excellence in his life in every respect. And the exercise part was, I invented a website called the Nap Shack. There really could not be anything more contrary to Chris than something called the Nap Shack. Chris was also very, very inclusive with me. He wanted to introduce me to his friends. He wanted to introduce me to his mentors and friends. And one of his friends was I don't even know what they're called. It's at an exercise club where they get on the bikes and go. Spin class, he said, hey, come on, meet my friend that runs a spin class. I got there, got on a bike. I think I lasted 4 minutes. And I barely lasted 4 minutes. And he was on it for an hour. But he didn't judge me. He wanted me to meet all his friends. He was always a friend to me. He had a very, very important, demanding, I should say, job online in his house. He would start work at 5:30, 6, and he'd work, who knows, 10, 12 hours a day. But he found time. He insisted in connecting. He insisted to put aside 10 minutes for he and I to connect and what's going on in our lives. Excuse me. I'm nervous and so he made time for his friends. And it was really quite remarkable. And I couldn't believe how committed he was to his exercise program. I mean, gosh, I would get tired just thinking about it, barely thinking about it. And he was inspired, I think most importantly, and something I really resonated with and appreciated about Chris, he was truly inspired to inspire. And look at the friends that surround him. Lisa, Kathy, Barry, and what you may not know, Barry's father, right? He was truly inspired to inspire. If he was invited to give a talk on whatever, something inspiring, I assure you, it was so important to him. He had a PhD, he had a doctorate in divinity. He was in addition to his technical work, his work in the technical industry, which I can't even explain. He had a dream, he really did, and he made it come true. So I want to thank God for sharing Chris with me. As someone who's been a loner and pretty much to a great degree in my life, Chris really stands out as an oasis of friendship to me. And I love him. And it can't be true. And with that said, maybe it doesn't feel real because it isn't. Because life never ends. The idea of Chris, this being that was inspired to inspire and to be an example of excellence, he'll always be there. Always. I had to tell a story about the body being gone to even come close to the idea that he is. And he's not gone. So I just want to say the idea, and I really appreciate what you're offering as far as the process of acceptance of these changes that we go through. So thank you very much. I think that's what I want to say. He was a great friend, and I will never forget that wink. And thank you so much for coming and spending an hour or two to remember Chris and share in our appreciation of him. So thanks.
Okay, I found the aunt's letter. I just want to make sure. No, this isn't the right one. I'll run upstairs. Ted, why don't you come over and share with us your relationship with Chris? And I'll run upstairs and get that because she's on this video and I want her to hear that we all heard this. Come over.
Okay. So we can take this off now?
Yes, you may.
Oh, thank you. So I'm Ted Brunel, and I've had the pleasure and honor and fill in the rest of the blanks of knowing the person we call Chris. It was great to hear the other speakers, especially talking about the grief. I'm going to pick up from there and say that when I got the phone call that Chris had died, that he had drowned, I immediately had a feeling come in, and that feeling just ignored definition. So I started asking myself, what's going on? And that's where the teachings that Chris picked up and went on to develop greater awareness was based on A Course in Miracles. Oh, is that loud enough? Can people hear? Oh, okay. Oh, come.
Magic.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you. So I started out my preparation for today with this idea that my introduction to Chris happened through the Living Enrichment Center. I was leading A Course in Miracles groups, which met after the Wednesday night service, and invited Chris to join our group after the service, which he gladly accepted along with his friend. Chris always had a friend. 90% of the time, it was, take a guess, male or female. This began a 20-year friendship involving Chris's spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical growth and development. And I'm truly honored to have been a part of that. So going back to the idea of Chris and with myself being notified of his drowning. It took a while with that feeling, what's going on? I know it up here, I feel it here, what's going on here? And it took a couple of hours in processing before I realized the one thing that I tried to teach is to be honest with your thoughts and your feelings. And I got in touch with that feeling of sadness. In that sense, I've been around the world twice and done this with war and peace and everything else, seems like. So what would I have to be sad about with one more person in my life moving on? I played with that for a bit, and immediately I turned to the resource that I knew would have the answer. And that was A Course in Miracles. I organized a real brief gathering for some of Chris's friends and Course in Miracles. And one of the things we always did was share the sayings from A Course in Miracles. We often call them the dessert cards or the "oh no, my God" cards. Anyway, we had a short, brief group come together, and the thing that came up was I asked each person there to draw a workbook lesson. And the workbook lesson followed the ideal that what if Chris had a message for you right here, right now, and it's in that little box of the workbook lessons, what would it be? And several people shared their concerns. And then one person said, my card is workbook lesson 109. And workbook lesson 109, coming from Chris, said to me, I rest in God. And that is the message that came through very clearly. Written form, feeling form, and just in about 10 seconds, I felt that feeling of sadness dissipate, go away. So I wanted to share that part of it and give you a little bit of an idea what Chris and I kind of meant to each other. Following several months of our weekly meetings, Chris and it became apparent that Chris was wanting the interactions to involve social and personal issues, which I found to fall along the lines of a slightly older male figure as some kind of mentor for the journey from being in a marriage with 2 children to being a single male with an ex and financial and other commitments. Over the course of the next 10 years, this involved Chris taking on responsibility for taking care of his father, Paul, as well as the children. New relationships, plural on that. Moving several times, career issues, notice the plural on that. And he had a consistent involvement with the Course in Miracles, including starting several study groups in his house, local church, senior center, library, and several other places. And then with the passing of his father, it wasn't long before he took on moving his mother from Florida to Oregon. And she had been in a nursing home back there. And getting her put into a care home setting here till her passing several years ago. New job positions and duties were also a driving force for him at this time, and he never backed off from them. He always met them head on, not trying his best, doing his best. And Chris and I had many discussions about this journey as they were happening. And it led to him becoming involved with Reiki. He became a master in Reiki. A concept called holographic repatterning. He picked up on that, became a practitioner. With my, I want to say guidance, but it was not guidance, with my assistance, he got involved in remodeling his home and getting into electronics and foundational construction issues with his home and other places. And the thing about it that finally occurred to me is he got so much of that from YouTube. Wow. Hey, I need to find out about this YouTube stuff. During this journey, I noticed that it's a constant urge that Chris had to learn and apply what he was learning. It wasn't just good enough to learn something, he had to be able to apply it, especially in the computer world. During this journey, I was privileged to see his competitive spirit, urging him to not be content with just being okay. And this was met with kindness and concern for the highest good with all those that he interacted with. What I'm saying there is it was not an easy road for Chris, dealing with work, relationships, all these family issues, children, ex-wives. But it's during this part, Chris and I took a class, another class at the Living Enrichment Center. And part of the program was to write our own obituary. I do not know who Chris listed to give his eulogy, but it was from this exercise that I chose to list Christopher Blanton Farmer as the individual to give the eulogy for myself when I left this plane. So what's happened recently? It's changed my wishes. And now I can only say to Chris, well done, my friend, until we meet again. I rest in God, and so it is. And now we say amen. And I have a little deck up here. We call them by different names, but I invite each one before you leave today to go up and basically just say, okay, Chris, what message do you want me to take? There'll be a really clear message for you. So taking this opportunity to remember Chris and to be a part of this wonderful program right here, right now, helps me understand what you have in you, bring it forth, and it will save you. If you do not bring forth even that little which is within you, it will destroy you. Chris learned that. He applied it. And for that, I, as well as many of us, are very grateful. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today.
I found the letter from Aunt Marion. Thank you, sir. Memories of Chris. Chris and I, and of course my children, Jennifer and Colin, go back a long way. He was our cousin. His grandmother, Lillian Farmer, was one of my favorite people, and she and my father were best friends as well as first cousins. Chris's father, Paul, and I grew up in England. Our family moved to the US before Paul did. When he arrived, he stayed with us in Darien, Connecticut. He met his wife, Sue, and they were married on Governor's Island in New York, where my sister Annette and I were bridesmaids. They bought a house in New Jersey. Laura was born there, and 6 years later, so was Chris. Quite coincidentally, the family moved to California 3 weeks after we did, living only an hour away. This enabled us to have our holidays together as a family. It was in Chris's high school years that their family life unraveled. Chris's mother, Sue, moved to Florida, and she and Paul got divorced. Rather than move in with us, Chris lived with a high school buddy until he graduated high school. He was on his own in high school. Oregon and the Air Force came next. Then came Tish, the mother of their children, Megan and Devin. I flew to Grants Pass, Oregon, to attend their wedding. I must say it was absolutely beautiful. The colors, the dresses, the people, the setting. It was one of the rare occasions, rare times Chris's family was all together. Unfortunately, around the time Devin was born, Chris's sister Laura committed suicide. The shock and circumstances left Chris in a really bad place. Life was very tough for him until he found, well, she has Unity of Beaverton, but we now know that it was LEC, I'm sure, Living Enrichment Center, and then that led him eventually to Unity of Beaverton. But yes, obviously it was also a terrible time for Tish, and the marriage didn't survive. I would like to share a couple stories about Chris. My husband, Jen, and I flew up to Oregon to join Chris and the children for Thanksgiving around 2008. I booked the tickets, then realized that November had 5 Thursdays that year. Yes, we went a week early. Chris was marvelous. He prepared a complete and delicious Thanksgiving meal early, then took us all around the area, including Portland. We had such an enjoyable time. The other fun story is about Chris's competing in triathlons. He had a competition in Santa Rosa, which happened to be only an hour away from Jen's house in Concord. She and her husband, Allison, decided to cheer Chris on. Jen was able to monitor where he would be and when, and she and Al cheered him on at each location there. They were also at the finish line cheering on Chris. He was really surprised because it hadn't been planned ahead. Jen and Chris, and often me, have talked regularly by phone, and since we lived inconveniently far apart. We shall miss him terribly, as will his first cousins, Neville and Sean, and his uncle Tony in England. Thank heavens for Facebook, or we would never have known what happened to Chris. And I can share that with you. When she reached out to me, she had seen it on Facebook. Well, the reason that they found it on Facebook was because Chris called often. And she said to her daughter, I haven't heard from Chris in a while. And Jen said neither had she. And so Jen went looking to see what she could find about him. And that's how they discovered the loss. Yeah, it was really sad, but she did find me, and we communicated quite a bit. So thank you for being his family. And at this time, I also want us to remember that Chris was a father, and he had 2 children, Megan and Devin. And what I can tell you, and I'm sure anybody that knows him knew, he adored those kids. And he struggled with the relationships. He was working very hard with his daughter and coming together with her. He was so thrilled that she was in his life. And he never gave up knowing that eventually he and his son would be united. That he held no harm against that young man. He loved him and he wanted what was best for Devin. So there you go. And I will now turn this all over to Barry Dennis.
you doing?
Thank you. The words I have to say may well be simple, but they're true. Until you give your love, there's nothing more that we can do. Love is the opening door. Love is what we came here for. No one could offer you more. Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen? You say it's very hard to leave behind the life we knew. There's no other way. Now it's really up to you. Love is the key we must turn. Truth is the flame we must burn. Freedom the lesson we must learn. Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen? Love is the opening door. Love is what we came here for. Love is the key we must turn. Truth is the flame we must burn. Freedom, the lesson we must learn. Love is the opening door. Love is what we came here for. No one could offer you more. Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen? Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen? Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen? So like the first song, Make Me an Instrument, I chose this song as well because I think it captures the essence of my friend, Chris Farmer. He understood this. I saw it in his life. And I would like to put to rest an age-old, what to me now feels like an age-old question in this movement that many of us, most of us are a part of, called New Thought. The question is, are we Christians or not? It comes up a lot, doesn't it? We ask ourselves, people who say they're Christians want to know if you're a Christian. People who are afraid of Christians want to know if you're a Christian. But today I am thoroughly a Christian. I have made that decision because what does it mean to follow in a certain way? Therefore today I'm a Christian. And I hope you all will join me in becoming true Christians. Because as everyone has stated, he lived a beautiful life, an amazing life. His heart was true. And in that way, I'm a Christian. When the word came, at first I was hit with this feeling like that's not real. This can't be happening. And then I decided to text a boy who was at my church, Celebration Church, in the youth group there. And Chris was the leader of that youth group for many, many years. And so I decided to text this boy who's now a young man. But he grew up with Chris every Sunday. So I texted him, I said, I have some difficult news to tell you. Reverend Chris Farmer passed away yesterday. And the response I got captured it so well. A text came back saying these words, that is difficult news. Chris Farmer was one of the most authentically kind people I have ever known. And this was coming from a boy who grew up under his wisdom, under his watch, under his teachings. And then it continued. It's moments like this that make me believe that there is a time where beautiful souls are needed somewhere else. And in that moment, it's like I had a life review. Because when I got this message back, I saw in my mind all the countless times at the end of the service, Chris would come in the back with all the kids. And I had to finish my talk. And a lot of times it was difficult because I never knew what was coming. For example, I will never forget this day. It was the middle of summer, it was hot out, and he came walking in, and I'm trying to do the crescendo of my talk. He comes walking in with all the kids, and he was wearing, on this 100-degree sunny day, complete head to toe, water, rain slicker outfit, bright yellow, a yellow cap, yellow top, big yellow pull-on slickers, and big yellow boots. And he stood there and he gave me, as he always did, what I call the Chris drink. It's an upside down spot, right? And I'm up here trying, every Sunday it was something. And that's why this boy remembers. That's why he thinks of him this way. And what a wonderful legacy. I thought, my gosh, all of those kids, hundreds of children, touched by one of truly the most kind, authentically kind human beings ever. A beautiful soul. I thought, what an amazing legacy. May we all have such a legacy. And you see, that wasn't just any child, that was my own son. And I became so grateful. I was so aware in that moment of what had happened all those years that I was peripherally aware of, but somehow it hit me in my soul what a gift he had given me and all the children at Celebration Church for all those years, and my own son. Now, Chris was always leading groups, and Ted helped inspire him to do that, but of course it was his soul, part of his being. Course in Miracles was the main thing he was doing, but other groups too. Always leading a group. Now, I grew up in Detroit. My childhood was in Detroit. There's a church there called the Church of Today. Jack Boland was the founder of that church. It became literally to this day probably one of the most impactful churches in the history of this planet. And I was baptized by Jack Boland. Now, Jack Boland used to say that study groups, oftentimes their whole purpose is to have another study. But he would say that's not the point. The point of a study group is to learn something to implement into your life, to make your life better. And that's what Chris was doing. His life was not about having another study group. It's about finding another way to implement a change in his life and anyone else's that would be a part of that study group. What we're here to do, I often say, is close the gap. There's a theological, philosophical, mental understanding of who we are and how we are to be. Yes, we all kind of share that. And then there's how we actually are in the world. And there's a gap. And our journey here, I always say, is to close that gap. And I don't know anyone else, honestly, in my life, that I believe worked harder, more sincerely, and did that work more than Chris Foreman. The work of closing the gap, being closer and closer to your soul, rather than this part of us, the ego, whatever we want to call it, that keeps us distance from the deepest truth that we know. One day after church, Chris and I were hanging out at Celebration, and I got a text that told me someone in the church was starting a group. And I had no idea it was going on. These kind of things happen at churches, don't they?
Yes, it does.
And I was like, wait a minute, getting sign up, getting emails, gonna do it, get a room, I'm like, hold everything. You can't do that. So Chris was sitting, I'm telling Chris, like, this is unbelievable. What is this? You can't do this. So I start texting the guy who was starting the group without telling me. And I was mad. I was like, you can't, what are you doing? We have to talk to me about this. And Chris goes, Barry, you might want to wait before you push send. And I was like, every part of my being knew he was right. That part, that spirit part, but the other part was like, no way. And I sent it, and I knew he was right, and it created all kinds of drama, you know what I mean, all the stress and all that stuff. But Chris was right, and I know the power of the pause. I have a whole program called The Power of the Pause. Pause for a minute. But that gap sometimes is hard to fill, isn't it? But Chris knew, he knew. That's why today I'm a Christian. Now, about 7 months ago, Chris and I were talking on the phone, and we would get into long conversations, philosophical conversations about everything from our families and everything. And it came up that, I don't know why it did. I said, I've been struggling with plantar fasciitis. Has anybody ever plantar fasciitis? Oh my God, it's a nightmare. So I've been struggling with plantar fasciitis, and I told him that. He goes, oh man, I've been through that too. I had it for like a year, he said. And I said, yeah, I've been having different varying degrees for like 4 years now. He goes, Barry, I know what you have to do. You've got to get some supportive shoes with good arch support and put them by your bed. Do not ever walk without the arch supports in your shoe anywhere. You have to practice it. You have to be committed to it. Don't do it. Go to the kitchen with your shoes on. Go to the bathroom with your shoes on. Go to your car with your shoes on. Anything you're doing, and your feet will heal. And so I started doing it because Chris said so. So I had shoes, and I got these insoles in them, and I have them on right now. And I stand before you pain-free in many ways because of Chris. So I was committed to this practice. I did it everywhere, every day. I wore my shoes in the house. Sometimes my wife would be a little, can't you just have some different shoes to wear inside the house and keep these ones over here? But I did it for a long, long time, and I was committed to it. And in no small way, I'm pain-free because of the coaching I got from Chris. To wear those shoes, to put in the correct insoles that support my arch. And now I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute, there's a deeper message. Because I saw this in Chris, his commitment, right? His work ethic, his just standards, that you do what you need to do with excellence to support your arch. In other words, the arch of your life, so that when the time comes, your beautiful soul is ready to go somewhere. You're committed to your insoles, to that arch, so that you can move through this life with less pain and less suffering and more freedom than you've ever known. And so all these things are why I am now a Christian. And in New Thought, we often talk about body, mind, and spirit. This trilogy, the body, the mind, and the spirit. And we give a lot of lip service to things, just like groups that we form and are part of, and we're just there to make another group. But he took all three very seriously. He worked very hard at conditioning the body, what do we call it? Temple, that's right, the body temple. What was that? Oh yeah, temple. And I don't expect anybody to put in as much sincere effort as he did. But I am asking each of us today as newly anointed Christians, what we might do. What a wonderful way it might be today to allow his life and his example to make a little change in our own life for ourselves, to make our lives better. What we might do today for our body, so that our temple might be a little more holy place for our soul. Because we know how committed Chris was to it. And how about to the mind? When he studied, when he worked, his divinity, his course, my gosh, I was always so impressed with the level of his commitment and his work toward excellence. And if you and I can just lift that up just a little bit more and close that gap a little bit more, the more joy we will have, the more love, light, peace, and joy. Where might we today step into that example? And then, of course, the spirit, the meditation, the time looking within, all these things Chris was committed to. And as was pointed out, his life wasn't easy. It wasn't like an easy situation. There were some challenging things. But I, as many of you, I'm sure, saw him move through them with a lot of grace. A lot of grace. And we had a lot of conversations about some of these challenges. And my heart would just break. Because I know Chris and I know his spirit. But man, was he able to come to that and work at closing that gap and being in the spirit, coming to it with patience and kindness and love, and building a pause. So much. So it's my hope today that we can honor his life and honor his spirit. And I have been now for several days, I've been thinking about what can I do as a new Christian to make my life better in honor of his life, but for selfish reasons, so that I can be a better person. So let's close our eyes just for a moment. And I invite us all to have a little life review like I had. And consider these things. Where is it in your life that maybe there's a place where you've been thinking about your body temple, that you could put a little more energy, just something more that might house the temple with more purity and love and light and joy. Or maybe for you, it's something in your mind, some study. You've been thinking, maybe I should take this on, whatever it is for you. Maybe I should look deeper into this. Maybe I should open my mind toward this. Or maybe it's something closely related to your spiritual journey, as they all are. That's what they all relate to, but maybe something specifically about your spiritual journey. I know for each of us, there's something calling to us that we can step into today. Maybe there's a place we can build an applause. Maybe there's a place where we can begin to have consciousness of our body, our mind. And in so honoring this example. Okay. And so one last story. Chris was, for many years, we talked about his work for PGE. And he was considering it often, feeling like he needed to change. And I know many of us, I have come to a crossroads in my own life, where there's this concept called letting your good become the enemy of your better. And he had a great job. It was really a wonderful, really great, they made good money and it was good challenging, but there was just a point where it was just not really fulfilling him. I wonder if anybody else has ever felt that. And I know we often teach, I do, to face your fears, move through them, and the power of letting go. Letting go, so that your good is not the enemy of your good. Well, Chris did it. He did it. He let go of this job. He faced that fear, he let go. And it was a good job. And you know what happened? He made more money, he had more fun, he had more free time, he was consulting, and he got a contract back with the same company he used to work for, getting more money. Isn't that wonderful? So maybe there's something we're ready to let go of, because our better good is calling. And these and many other things are the things that I learned from my good friend. The things that will today make me, and I hope you, a profoundly unashamed, committed Christian. Bless you. Thank you.
Okay, so. There. Okay. We have 29 people on our webinar. Isn't that fabulous? Yes, thank you. Thank you all for being there. So let's close this celebration, this party, this event with a prayer. There is one life. One life. And that life is God's life. And that life is my life now. I stand in this place knowing the connection that I have with the divine presence is as close as I allow. Let us know that God is present everywhere, always, at all times, here and now. And if you just ask the question, if you just say, yes, God, yes, you will feel that presence as a part of you that lifts you to a new way of seeing, to a new way of being, and to walk a new path. God waits for us to welcome God. God is present for us when we say yes. And in that yes, we are saying yes to life, yes to all of the potential, that everything that inside you is waiting to become is now available in this here and now. And let us take this lesson from Chris Blanton Farmer and be all we can be in every moment, on every day, with every person that we meet and greet. Let us have the recognition of that kindness that we may share it. Let us have the gift of compassion so that judgment is not a part of our lives. Let us have the gift of love. Love is the gift that God is. God doesn't just love us. God is love. And for this, I say thank you, God, for all of this, for the life that was Chris and continues to be Chris. I say thank you, God. And for this gathering here this afternoon in person and on the webinar, I say thank you, God. and so it is. Amen.
Let's all stand together. We'll sing another song together. I know this is the way that Chris saw the world and sees the world now. So I'm going to sing with me. I see trees of green. I see trees of green. Red roses too. Red roses too. I see them bloom. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see sky blue and clouds of white, and clouds of white. Bright blessed day, the bright blessed day, dark sacred nights, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, the colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Hallelujah.
I hope you will all stay, walk around, look at the pictures, speak to each other from the different groups, and let us know how you know Chris. Where did Chris fit in your life? Okay, thank you. Many, many blessings to all of you. Thank you so much for participating. Bye-bye. Thank you, David. Aw, thanks, Reverend Annie. Christine M., thank you. Thank you. Neville Farmer, thank you so much, Neville. Thank you, thank you.